They loaded Newton on, and the robot that looked like a bunch of metal balls put together flew Newton to the Emperor's fortress, which was a Greek temple-looking building. The robot pressed a button to a hatch. The hatch door opened up, and Newton fell on the steps of the Emperor's royal Greek-like temple. For the centurions dragged Newton into the temple and said, "Here is the monster that attacked us." The Emperor walked up to Newton and said, "So this is the mutant, Newton. Was the mutant was the mutant the evil monster, the evil menace of the universe? You know, he doesn't look too human. He feels like hard rubber, and his arms seem to be made of some kind of steel. Well, anyway, cremate the body and use the ashes for fuel." They carried they started carrying Newton off, when suddenly Newton came alive and pushed the guards away. "Oh no," said the Emperor with fear. "Yeah, you better oh no. You're going to get it for destroying the sea fleet and destroying the continents on Earth," shouted Newton. Suddenly the guards fired their bubble guns, trapping Newton in an indestructible rubber bubble. The Emperor walked up to Newton and said, "You aren't very smart, are you? I'm only going to take over the Earth so I can use my mind control experiments on them. You see, if I can control the world, I would be the most powerful thing in the universe. Today Earth, tomorrow Zibel's," shouted the Emperor. Zibel's. Newton asked, "Are you the only one that is going to have this power?" "Yes, but I'm trying to give the Egamians some of the power also. That way we can take over the universe easier and conquer it without being attacked. Thanks to you, you almost destroyed the universe's population, making it easier for me. The Earth as you know it won't be the same next month. I will have changed the continents, making it all who live on it my slaves. And it will be my domain. Then when I get stronger, I will conquer the cosmos." "You can't do that. How do you get your power? And if you could, I bet you couldn't harm me." The Emperor smiled and said, "I just get my power from eating things. I just get my power from eating things. And I'm going to lower the population of Earth with attacks and destruction, and make them slaves. And I almost forgot. This is what I can make you do." Suddenly the Emperor started staring at Newton. Newton just laughed and thought he was being stupid. Then suddenly Newton couldn't feel his right arm very well. It started raising up. Newton tried to control it, but couldn't. The dark-haired Emperor was controlling Newton's parts. Suddenly Newton's arm slapped him across the face, then back-slapped him. Newton tried to control it, but the faster the Emperor would make Newton slap himself. Newton grabbed onto his slapping hand, but now both of them were slapping him. Okay, I see," shouted the terrified Newton. "Turn it off," Newton begged. The Emperor just kept it up, and was now making Newton hit himself like a jackhammer. "Quit, please, mercy," Newton yelled. The Emperor just laughed. And now Newton was knocking himself in the head, was kneeing himself in the head, and doing everything. His face was now pulpy and disfigured. Newton blacked out and was still hitting himself. When Newton came to, the Emperor did it again, and every time Newton would black out, he would quit. The Emperor decided to quit an hour when Newton was almost dead. A day later, the Emperor started attacking the continents again, plus destroying the Federation submarines and battleships again. When it quit, there were just 5 battleships and 7 subs left. Up in Mutania, Newton's crew was were thinking of something to do, and Newton was down in a sealed compartment like a safe for his prison. The Emperor talked to him on a speaker saying, "Newton, how do you like your new home? Is it cozy enough for you?" "It's terrific," Newton said, depressed and ashamed of him and ashamed. Then he thought of something that gave him a smile on his face and said, "Hey, Emperor, I've got some wonderful news for you. I've been away from my ship for 5 days. I've been away from my ship for 5 days. The people who are attacking said that if I wasn't back in a week, then Mutania would destroy this underwater bubble of yours. And there are just 2 days until Mutania starts its attack." The Emperor kind of laughed and said, "Your ship will do no harm to my city. It can't. The Federation already tried with their phasers and photon torpedoes. They all just bounced off the force field, while the guns of my city and submarines destroyed them. We'll see about that. Mutania is a powerful ship, and if it doesn't destroy your city, it will fire a proton missile and take Earth along with your city." Newton said proudly, "Your pride will make you fall, and if my city doesn't destroy your ship, then my mind will," laughed the Emperor. And back up on the sea, the sea fortress rose up out of the sea, and the ruler of Earth stepped out onto the balcony, with the seawater pouring all around him. The sun was setting, and all the battleships that were left on Earth circled around the fortress while the ruler gave his speech. He said over the speaker and radio, "My fighting fleet, I have something to say to you. We are going to start our attack now. Newton has destroyed all the attacking submarines and saucers, leaving the Undersea Empire alone. It is still very powerful, but I think we can destroy them if we attack fast. All of the submarines have been charged so they can withstand crush depth. You will all dive down now and attack the city before it destroys our Earth's continent. If the submarines are destroyed, then the battleships will drop their proton depth charges on the city. Start your attack now." The ruler watched the submarines dive down into the sea. The battleships sailed off over them and disappeared into the sunset. They were going... Oh, there again. Suddenly, they were going to give... Okay. They're going to follow his orders and give this Undersea Empire all they had. Then suddenly, as the ruler walked into the biggest room of the sea fortress, an earthquake started. The Emperor was... An earthquake started. The Emperor was attacking them with his mind. People went running here and there. They snapped on the shields of the fortress. Then all of a sudden, a ray shot out of the sea and hit it. Shaking it violently, it hit it again and again, causing it to snap its girders and everything. The fortress rocked back and forth. It was hit again, causing the bottom to explode. The fortress fell into the sea and exploded, then bubbled down into the waves. It was totally destroyed. And I'll read Newton versus the Undersea Empire part. Well, I've changed, haven't I? Haircut. Plus, it's about 2 weeks later. About a week later. Anyway, it's now November 29th, 1983. And going to finish up Newton and the Undersea Empire. This is part 2. I think, let's see, this one is called... Face is itching right here. Let's see, what is this? Okay, Newton and the Undersea Empire Part 2. This is called Newton versus the Undersea Empire Part 2. My tongue hurts right here. Okay. It looked bad for Earth as Newton knew it. Oh. It looked bad for Earth as Newton knew it. Newton was a prisoner of an emperor that could kill him using the power of Newton's mind. And Newton's crew didn't know what to do. The civilizations on Earth were now being destroyed by earthquakes and storms. And now volcanoes were threatening them. The submarines of the Earth were now approaching the city. They were the last hope of the Earth. The battleships watched the subs on TV. The submarines circled the domed city, and the general yelled, "Fire!" Torpedoes shot out of the 9 submarines and hit the force field, causing the undersea city to shake. "Again," yelled the general. The force field was hit again. The people in the city put more energy into the force field, and now nothing was happening. The only thing threatening from the submarine was the flashing light caused by the exploding torpedoes. "Fire phasers with photon torpedoes," commanded the general, but still nothing happened. The phasers just bounced off the shield like they were nothing. And the torpedoes had as much effect as pop guns. The emperor walked out of his mighty Greek-like temple and said, "It's pathetic, isn't it? It's like an ant trying to hurt an elephant." And in Newton's chamber, Newton was thinking of a way out. "If only I could get out of here and call my ship," he said to himself. Newton started punching the side of the glass-walled prison like a jackhammer. An hour later, and Newton was free. Newton leaped off the ground and flew into the air over the city. The submarines were still attacking, doing nothing to the force field. Newton flew down into the city's streets and knocked out the people who saw him. He put on the clothes of one of the men he knocked out and disguised himself so the emperor wouldn't attack him. And back in the emperor's temple, the emperor said to one of his officers, "Get ready. I think it's time we fought back. The submarines have had enough fun. It's our turn." A few minutes passed, and a laser beam shot out of the dome and hit one of the submarines, shattering it instantly. The submarines began to travel about quickly to escape the deadly laser beam. The laser beam fired again and destroyed another. Then, as another submarine ducked down into a crevice, the laser shot the crevice, melting the crevice away, then shattered the submarine with another strike of the yellow beam. There were just 6 submarines left.
tongue's really hurting. The submarines fired everything they had left into one spot, making the lights in the city flicker. But still the dome was undamaged. The laser beam started pecking off the defenseless submarines one by one. And seeing that it was hopeless to escape, the general shouted into his communicator, "I'm sorry to say this, but we are beaten and finished. There is only one thing to do. Ram the force field." The 4 submarines that were left lined up in a messed up zigzag line and started charging toward the force field. Newton watched them on a building roof and kept his fingers crossed. Yeah. For them to make it. Luck. The submarines began to pick up speed. "Ramming speed," shouted the general frantically. The subs were traveling at their top speeds toward the city with the ray beam trying to blast them. Yeah. It kept on missing them because they were traveling too fast. "Come on," shouted Newton. "You can do it." The submarines were going faster and faster, getting closer and closer to their suicidal run. Suddenly the laser beam hit one, shattering it into nothing and shaking the others. But there were still 3 left. Then suddenly it got another one. Newton was getting nervous now. "Come on, you can do it," he shouted. Then suddenly the submarines rammed the force field and exploded. Tongue. Okay, the submarines rammed the force field and exploded, shaking the city and making the lights flicker. Newton stood up angrily and said, "They might not have done anything, but I'll get my revenge on them." Newton flew off the building and down into an alley. He saw a communicator tower on a pyramid way out in the distance of the city. Newton flew off to get it and call Mutania. Newton flew low around the buildings in Greek pillar temple-like buildings to keep from being seen. Newton landed by the doorway of the communications pyramid and crashed down the door with one strong kick. Newton wiped out everybody in the room by kicking and throwing them here and there. Newton called Mutania and told them where he was and what to do. Newton said, "Sonia, in 30 minutes, fire phasers down onto the right side of the dome city, and make sure you have all the power in the phasers and shields." After that, Newton flew to the power generators of the city, and while Newton was about to do something with the power generators, outside the city, the battleships were dropping their quick-sinking proton depth charges. Around 200 charges were traveling down to the undersea city. Suddenly, they started going off, shaking the city. The shock waves were getting through the force field and shaking the buildings in the city. Now the depth charges were actually landing in the force field. Every explosion caused the lights to flicker on and off, and the debris to fall from the ceilings. One Greek-like temple crumbled in the streets and killed 20 people. The people in the city began to panic now. The thought of their world crashing in on them began to pass over their minds. The depth charges exploded again, causing two more temples to come crashing down. One of the Emperor's centurions ran up to the Emperor and shouted, "How, Emperor, how? They are beating us." They are beating us? Oh yeah, how, Emperor, how? They are beating us? Suddenly, the Greek-like temple's pillar of the Emperor crashed down and killed the centurion from another explosion. The people and soldiers were running frantically through the streets as the buildings crumbled down. The laser beam started firing at the battleships, destroying them quickly. The battleships knew that they couldn't escape that area of the sea from the laser, so they dumped all of their depth charges. It would take 20 minutes to blow up around the city, but it was worth it. A minute passed, and the laser destroyed all of the ships, but the battleships had done their job. Newton had rubbed out all the soldiers in the generator room, and was now turning up every switch in the generator to cause an overload. And when Newton got all the switches turned up, he slammed down the delayed destruct cord. Now the city would go up like a super H-bomb in a half an hour. Newton now had to dispose of the Emperor, the one that was trying to kill him. Newton suddenly felt a squeezing pressure around his head. It was caused by the Emperor's mind. The Emperor was going to kill Newton by squeezing him to death, and also cause the buildings to fall on him. Just as Newton fell down and was about to die, a centurion ran up to the Emperor and shouted, "How, Emperor, how? Our finest metropolis beaten by an inferior race." The Emperor killed the centurion for reminding him, then went back to crush Newton. But the Emperor was suddenly interrupted again when two red phaser beams streaked down through the sky, shot down through the sea, and hit the force field right in the weak area. The Emperor got control of the city's laser with his mind and shouted, "No, no, no, stop, I say, I command thee." A laser beam shot out of the dome and hit Mutania, shaking it badly. But Obakoba locked on the phasers and kept it up. "Stop," he shouted again, and Mutania was hit again and again. Every time the Emperor shouted stop, a rating shot would shoot out of the city and hit Mutania. Now the force field was beginning to cloud up and weaken. The generator was beginning to shoot up electrical fires and smoke, but the force field was still there. It kept on firing at Mutania. Now Mutania's shields were buckling. The force field was milky white. Suddenly the generator exploded and the force field was gone. Mutania's phasers were now on the dome. On the dome now. The dome melted away and tons of seawater began to pour down into the Empire. The depth charges were still going off, and now they were beginning to crack the transparent glass dome. People ran screaming here and there as the sea poured through the 50-foot wide hole Mutania had made, and the water crashed down the streets, washing the people up with it. The Emperor didn't know what to do or think. He suddenly thought about Newton and tried to find him so he could kill him. Newton tapped him on the shoulder. When the Emperor turned around, Newton sent him sprawling 10 feet to the steps from a dazing punch. Newton picked him up and gave him another and another before he could get his senses back. And while Newton was batting the Emperor around, the seawater was rising and knocking over the buildings and power plants. Huge explosions began. causing chain reactions. Buildings were shattered here and there, and the depth charges were cracking up the dome even more. The Emperor was crashing through a pill. The Emperor went crashing through a pillar from another Newton punch, then went through another, then crashed through a wall, and ended up tumbling down some steps. Newton picked him up and said, "Let me see you make me slap my face again and destroy my ship." Newton gave him a couple of more punches, and then slammed him around another pillar. Suddenly the seawater washed Newton away and down the street. Newton quickly grabbed onto a pillar and climbed up to the roof of a Greek-like temple. Suddenly, Newton went flying through the air back to the Emperor, who suddenly got his power back. Now the Emperor was punching Newton around like what Newton did to him. Newton quickly flew up on top of the temple to escape the Emperor and the rising sea. The temple crumbled, and Newton fell into the water. The Emperor laughed and picked up a pillar. He was just about to throw it on Newton and crush Newton with his mind when suddenly all the depth charges exploded at the same time, shattering the dome until it had a hole in it 500 feet in diameter. Almost all of the ocean deep came crashing down into the dome city, crushing the Emperor and washing Newton into a roaring, thundering downpour. The roofs of the buildings quickly disappeared that the people were on. The whole empire was now destroyed and under the sea. Nobody was alive but Newton, who was badly injured. The sudden pressure put Newton in extreme agony. His whole mutated body was in the most pain he could ever remember being in. A few seconds later, and there was only the calm sea. Newton had saved the Earth, but now he had to save himself. Newton painfully boosted himself off the city street and began to swim his hardest before the city would explode. There was just 7 minutes before the city would go up like a hydrogen bomb. 2 minutes passed, and Newton 2 minutes passed, and Newton was surrounded by darkness. He was 3 miles from the city, and the city was ticking away. Newton was feeling a lot better now that the pressure was off of him, and was 4 miles from it another minute later. Suddenly a terrifying thing began to happen. Newton's artificial arms and legs began to feel heavy and weak. He was beginning to slow down. His artificial limbs were running out of power. They needed their monthly recharging, and all the action Newton was in really drained them. Now there was just 2 minutes before detonation. Newton could see the sun up above him. He was 5 miles up above the city, but now he was just creeping up it now. His limbs were almost energyless. Newton's life began to shoot by in his mutated mind. He thought he was doomed. He was moving very slowly now, and there was just 1 minute before detonation. And right as he was 6 miles above the city, he quit moving. He couldn't go on any further.